Super Tuesday will give pollsters and party members on both sides an idea of the big issues motivating voters. And for some, particularly young voters, the climate crisis is one of those top issues. So what do we know about Trump's policies and Biden's policies towards the environment? Our Antonia Kerrigan from our climate desk is with me. She's been looking into this for us. And Antonia, is it fair to say that when it comes to the climate, Trump and Biden are really rather far apart?
Absolutely. The most strident example to illustrate this contrast is the Paris Agreement. Of course, as early as he legally could, Donald Trump withdrew the US from that all-important climate agreement that was a global commitment to limit warming to 1.5 degrees above industrial levels. First thing Biden did on his very first day in office was to rejoin that agreement by executive order. Now, that's, the strongest example. However, you can see that there is some evolution over the years in Donald Trump's climate rhetoric. We remember from his early campaigns overt climate denialism. And now it's more of a economic argument, you might say, more a populist idea that climate action is anti-American, anti-consumer choice and pushes up the cost of living. The reason for that could be shifting sands in the sort of Americans' outlook. Recent polling showed in December that 63% of Americans worried about the dangers of climate change, including half of Republicans, so that does matter for Donald Trump. And 42% of Americans have seen extreme weather events in the last year. So that suggests that Americans may likely now be more sceptical than they once were of climate skepticism. That said, recent Gallup polls put only 2% of Americans classing the environment or the climate as their number one issue. So that's why the policies we're seeing and the arguments we're seeing are really framed from an economic point of view. For Trump, fossil fuels are cheap and abundant, and climate action, again, pushes up the cost of living. Whereas for Biden, climate action is an opportunity to stimulate industry, create jobs, and upgrade the economy into something more future-focused.
Indeed, and Biden has called himself in the past, hasn't he, America's climate president. But how would you describe his climate legacy, if at all? And how future-proof do you think those policies will be if he doesn't win in November?
Well, that's the real question. So in keeping with his economic case for climate action, Joe Biden did introduce the biggest piece of climate legislation ever in the United States. That's the Inflation Reduction Act, which involved a goal of reducing emissions by 40% by 2030. That's obviously significant, but the way to get there is what's more important. That was $380 billion in loans, grants, tax incentives towards developing clean energy, clean industry, and electric vehicles, as well as other measures to de-incentivise polluting. Now, subsidies and tax incentives and these kind of industry-focused policies, quite hard to unpick, especially because a lot of that money is going to states where Donald Trump is ahead in the polls. $48 billion has gone into Georgia, Arizona, Nevada and Michigan combined on EV and battery investment. And those are states that Trump would like to win in, and they're industrial states, the kind of states that he would like to target. So that part of Biden's climate action may be relatively future-proof. However, on fossil fuels, Joe Biden's record is a little bit more dappled at the time coming out of COP28, when we're really supposed to be focusing on moving away from fossil fuels. He did, in his first week in office, act the Keystone XL $8 billion oil pipeline project from the US to Canada. That was significant. He has recently placed a freeze on new LNG export terminals to reduce the export of LNG to, for instance, Europe, pending an environmental review of the consequences of that kind of activity, and also introduced a methane fee. That's a $900 charge per CO2 equivalent tonne per year of methane emissions. That's targeting big oil and gas producers who pollute just by extracting these things. However, in 2023, the US produced more oil than any country ever in history. That's not what Joe Biden was aiming for, but he moved to rein in the price at the pump just before midterms, and in doing so boosted domestic production. So it's, as we say, a mixed bag in terms of his legacy. In contrast, though, let's have a listen to what Donald Trump says about fossil fuel extraction.
We're going to drill, baby, drill right away. Drill, baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill. It's not his own coinage. It's not Donald Trump's own coinage, but it's one he's absolutely adopted with gusto and that he frequently repeats. And what it suggests is that if Trump is elected, the floodgate that Joe Biden tried to squeeze shut in terms of fossil fuel extraction and production will gush open.
All right, really important aspect of Super Tuesday. Thank you very much indeed, Antonia Kerrigan, for us there from our climate desk.